Matthew Miller, he's former chief spokesman for the Justice Department and an MSNBC analyst. Jonathan Allen is the head of content for Sidewire, and he also co-authored the book Shattered, Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign. And Jason Johnson's here. He's the politics editor at TheRoot.com and a professor at Morgan State University. And Elise Jordan, MSNBC political analyst, former Rand Paul advisor, and contributor to Time magazine. All right, we get a full deck here. Matthew, I want to start with you. President of the United States taken to Twitter to criticize James Comey the night before James Comey is testifying. What could the strategy be here?
I don't think there is a strategy. I think he's just angry and thin-skinned, the same as is true about most of his tweets. But when you look at what he did, it is extremely damaging for the President of the United States to say something like that about the FBI. He's basically questioning what the FBI did last year, saying they acted inappropriately by not indicting Hillary Clinton when he presumably thinks he should have. And after last year's election cycle, where the FBI did do a lot of things that were a big departure from the way they usually behave. There were leaks about Hillary Clinton. There was, of course, Jim Comey's letter and his press conference. It's damaging to the FBI's reputation. It really hurts the FBI when Americans don't trust that their Justice Department is fairly investigating and prosecuting cases. And the president is just making that worse with his tweets and probably making it a lot harder for Jim Comey in his appearance before the committee today.
Elise, did the president go too far here? On one hand, maybe this is a setup on his part. If James Comey comes hard after President Trump today, Trump could say, see, he was out to get me. He was getting back at me. We know President Trump likes to play that game.
I just wonder how much it was about Comey even and Hillary Clinton's comments earlier in the day about how close she was to winning the election. I just think the combination, overflowed onto Twitter, his favorite medium. And one thing that I think most Americans can agree upon is that, please, President Trump, just stop tweeting. People are sick of it. That was something that Hillary Clinton, out of all of her comments, some of which I thought she probably would have been better, waiting a little more time. The tweeting that President Trump should perhaps not be tweeting on foreign affairs, I think is universally felt among all Americans.
I can tell you want to weigh in.
No, his supporters love it. They want him to keep tweeting. They think that makes him a real guy. They think even on foreign policy.
Last week, I did a round of focus groups in Texas, and even his own supporters want him to stop tweeting. It was kind of amazing.
If you ask them the question, they're going to say, well, maybe it's inappropriate. But if you talk to them in the bars, you talk to them at the bus station, you talk to them at McDonald's, they're going to say, you see what Trump said yesterday? Those liberals are going nuts. Donald Trump is doing what he needs to do to continue to get the support from the people who actually love him. Whether it's good for America, whether it's good for foreign policy, obviously not, but it's wonderful for his supporters. They like seeing a guy who says whatever he wants, whether or not it makes sense.
Jonathan, at this point, is James Comey such a politicized figure, whether he wants to be or not, he can't remove himself from that?
I think he is definitely a political football. And one other thing that nobody's really brought up here, but I think is an important way of looking at Donald Trump going after Jim Comey. With Hillary Clinton going after Comey on one side and saying he acted inappropriately, by Trump going on the other side and saying it may be helpful to Comey with the American public, because if he's taking criticism from the president of the Republican Party and from the losing Democratic nominee, they may look at it and say, if he's taking criticism from all sides of the political world, perhaps he's doing his job.
All right, I want to share a bit of what Hillary Clinton had to say yesterday, specifically about losing the election. Take a look.
I take absolute personal responsibility. I was the candidate. It wasn't a perfect campaign. There is no such thing. But I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off.
Jonathan, I want to go back to you on this, because your book has a lot of inside detail on her loss. And a lot of people who were part of her campaign, they don't like what you had to say in that book. But here you are, Hillary Clinton, saying, I'm taking the blame, but right there, did she really? What do you make of that answer?
Well, I think what she's saying is part of the reason that she lost. The Comey letter was not helpful to her. The Russian interference was not helpful to her. But there would not have been a Jim Comey had she not set up an email server that still has people shaking their heads. She made the case to the American public that Russians were tampering on behalf of Donald Trump during the debates. We heard her call him a Russian puppet. 17 U.S. intelligence agencies said the Russians were interfering. That did not have an effect. And one of the other things that wasn't brought up here but tracks with about the same time as the Comey letters, you had these Obamacare premium spikes going out, letters about that going out all over the country. So what she's talking about is certainly part of the story, and with such a close election, you could really point your finger at almost anything and say that that's what turned it. But I think, you know, what my co-author Amy Parnes and I found in reporting this book is that there were bigger flaws, bigger issues within the campaign, and you know, that's not our story. That's the story of the people that worked with her.
All right, Jason, what's your take there? Jonathan is clearly sort of referencing that email server,
Yes.
i.e. original sin.
Right. Well, look, my mother always says, don't give them the bullets to shoot you with, right? She gave the press, she gave opposition a lot of bullets to shoot her. But to be perfectly honest, I think her excuse or her explanation for losing is a lot better than, say, Mitt Romney's. Remember, he got on the phone with Paul Ryan's like, well, it was the urban voters and people. Look, no one who loses likes to say it's all me, because it usually isn't all them. And Hillary Clinton has a unique argument because she won the popular vote. So, you know, look, did she screw up? Did she run the best campaign? No. But for her to say, well, no, it was all me, and ignore the fact that there was a huge October surprise, for her to ignore the fact that you had voter suppression going on, that would be dishonest for her to say as well. So I think what she said is fine. She's going to walk off into the sunset, and she'll never run for office again.
You know, the fact that you bring up Mitt Romney, I have to ask you, Elise, do we blame Hillary Clinton for losing more than we blame Mitt Romney or John McCain? Do we make it, it's her, it was all about her?
I think that they were more fundamentally, but she was a more fundamentally flawed candidate than either Mitt Romney or John McCain when it comes to what Republicans as a party wanted at the time. I think that she had so many flaws, and the primary process was so rigged on her behalf, and it wasn't an open, if you can say anything, you can say that Donald Trump, the Republican primary, wasn't rigged. There were so many Republicans who didn't want him to be the nominee.
Okay, Jason, we don't have time for you to comment. I'll agree, maybe not rigged, but it was tilted.
Oh,
there was a
of course
thumb
it was
on the
tilted.
scale.
Yeah,
all right, Matthew, I want to talk to you about something quickly before we go. Look ahead to next week. We know James Comey testifying today is important, but the real marquee testimony is on Monday. Sally Yates is going to testify. She was the acting attorney general at the beginning of the Trump administration. She is the one who specifically warned the White House about Michael Flynn, and now the AP is reporting that she's going to, that in her testimony, I want to make sure I have it right. They say, quote, she expressed alarm to the White House about President Donald Trump's national security advisor's contacts with the Russian ambassador, which could contradict how the administration has characterized her counsel. Boom. Should we be expecting a bombshell here?
I think this testimony, if she testifies, as the AP says, and I expect she will, I think it's going to be extremely damaging to the White House, because what it's going to show is the Attorney General of the United States comes to the White House, tells the White House counsel, the sitting national security advisor, someone who has access to everything the White House, everything the United States is doing at the most secret level, is compromised. What he is saying publicly, what you are saying publicly, has left him subject to blackmail by the Russian government. And the White House did nothing about that for 3 weeks. And in fact, it's not clear they ever would have done anything about it if that story hadn't have leaked. And then once it did leak, they then didn't tell the truth about it afterwards. They said, you know, she just came to give us a heads up. She didn't really explain what it was that had happened. I think she's going to contradict all of that, and it is going to be extremely, extremely damaging to the White House's credibility. And also raise questions about their vetting, both for Mike Flynn and for a number of other people who are still there today.
So when and if, Elise, we hear that testimony, and we look back on Sean Spicer a week ago saying, Obama, he's the one who vetted him, how bad will it look for the White House?
Nothing good is going to continue to come from this Mike Flynn story. From the beginning, he never should have been in the role. He was a flawed candidate for the position, and the irregularity, I'm stumbling on my word, all the irregularities that keep coming out about the way he handled himself after his military service and the foreign entities that he lobbied for is going to continue to be damaging to the Trump administration.
Two things. Number one, the issue is, when are we finally going to see a shoe drop from the standpoint of someone getting arrested or someone getting pulled out of this administration beyond Flynn? Because this either makes Mike Pence look like an idiot or a liar, makes Trump look like an idiot, or there's a lot of different things to it. But I also have to say this, Sally Yates is going to be the hottest ticket in D.C. for years. If she does well in this testimony, she's got a governor's race in Georgia, she's got a vice life. There are lots of things that she could do politically to launch her life after this testimony next week.
I'd love to know what Mike Flynn's son is up to these days. He's been an aggressive tweeter, hasn't he? Are you watching today? All right, you two stick around. You're not going to go anywhere. Matt and Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan, I think you might need to come back the day Sally Yates testifies. I got a feeling. All right, we're going to take a break. We've got a